Howdy YouTube. Got a new one here today. I picked up this old Century desk fan. This is an old one. It's in pretty rough shape. We were at my wife's grandparents. They had a appliance shop down in Fairfield, Iowa. Her grandpa has passed away. Her grandma has since retired, and we're cleaning it out, and we found this old fan. My mother-in-law really took a liking to it, and I persuaded her to let me take it and clean it up first and see if we could get it working. So it's pretty basic. It does have an oscillation. It's model 254. The patent date on it, so can't read the tag here, but we'll clean that up later. It was patented in 1914, and I did a little research, and it would appear that Century fans, they stopped making them in 1923. So if that's wrong, someone I'm sure can correct me. I don't know a lot about fans. I'm not a fan collector, but I do like them. They are neat. I thought I could get this one working. So this isn't really a restoration, but we'll just clean it up and see what we can do with it. This cap on the back, it was some kind of like a pot metal or a zinc, and it's got a little steel plate in it. I tried and tried to get this out. It's meant to just unscrew. It was so corroded, it was just stuck in there. It had been tipped over and it had broke a little corner of it off. It ends up just falling apart, and I picked those threads out of there, and then I have to come up with something to cover up this little gear case. It's not structurally important, but just keeps dirt out. Okay, so I have a couple issues I've got to address here. This is awfully rusty, and these screws, this one and this one, I soaked those with penetrating oil for a couple days. I even ground that out so my screwdriver would fit a little deeper. I cannot break these loose. I'm going to grind these heads off so I can remove this. So I took it out to the garage, and we went ahead, we drilled the heads of those screws off, and then we're able to get it apart here. Obviously has not been apart in a long time. Very corroded. Luckily the switch was in pretty good shape. I think it'll just a little clean up. We'll solder some new wires in. That should be serviceable, which is a good thing, because I don't think I could get another switch like this. Okay, I've decided this can't be saved. It is just too rough. Dropping rust everywhere as we speak. I mean, there's just nothing left of it. The whole thing is just rotten, and if I try and sandblast it, there will be nothing left when I'm done. So I did sandblast the base and got it all cleaned up. I think I will cut, to get rid of this, I'll cut a piece of wood that will go in the bottom, and I'll just put in 3 screws and it can sit on a piece of wood. That'll be fine. Okay, so I did some cleaning. I degreased this housing. Now, when I took this apart, this cap had fallen apart. I've got this old, it was a fuel cap, and I just trimmed it down. It's not right. I mean, the right thing to do would be to thread apart. So this cap actually fits in there real nice. And when I'm done, I'll just take that and I'll just lightly tap it in. It'll be just fine. It plugs the hole. It's not original, but it will work. This fan blade, I soaked it in a lacquer thinner. That took all the paint right off. And then this one, I just polished this a little. It didn't take hardly anything with some super fine steel wool and a little polishing compound. Just metal polish. And that really cleaned up nice. I mean, boy, you can see the reflection in it. So I'm going to go ahead and polish up these other 3 blades. That's going to look really nice. And then I went ahead and I had sandblasted this, so I shot a coat of primer on it. Same with the grill here. I picked up this cord. It's a woven cord. It's 18 gauge, wrapped. It's not exactly like what the original would have been, but it's kind of nice, and it's old looking, and it's going to look nicer than a modern cord, so that's what's going to go back on that. Ooh, that is brittle. That is brittle. Nothing left of it. These little windings, you have to be so gentle because the insulation is just completely dried out, so brittle. If you're not careful, you know, you can't find a stopping point. And so, and I'm no pro on this, but I just carefully clean them back a little bit. I solder them, and then you'll see how I kind of secure the wires. And I just try not to bump things around any more than I absolutely have to. This liquid tape is nice for stuff that is like really, really delicate. That way you don't have to worry about trying to get a heat shrink or something on there. I'm just going to take, you can see this stuff is set up pretty hard. Like that stuff, it sets up real hard after a day. So, we'll slip this on here, we'll go ahead and that'll keep that cloth from unraveling. Then I'm going to put some fresh liquid tape on, and then we're going to glue it all together. Take that. Originally on the case here that goes over the top, where that wire exit, that was kind of like a little compression, and that compression nut would tighten down. That's what would hold the wire, but it was so rusty I couldn't get it apart, so that's why we just had to kind of glue it in there. It's not the best, but it's just the best I could do, and I didn't want to damage the case of the fan. I should mention that I just sprayed this, just spray can. I used a black satin. I felt like the satin will help not show some of the imperfections. You know, it's pretty pitted on the base. So I also think that it looks a little more classic with just a satin paint job. I'm happy with how it came out. Okay, so when this goes down in here, so that engages a groove that's in this little detent. So turning that back and forth, if I turn this a little, you can see this detent here pulls that in. So then, when we come around to this side, you can see right now this gear is turning and this one is stationary. We flip that over to on, and that engages. It's hard to see, but this is turning now. With this plate here, sometimes you can spray these with some new black paint and you can gently sand on them, and you can really bring them back and make them look nice. This thing was so worn, I just didn't want to do anything to take any more material away from it. It's held on with these two tiny little nails, and I don't know, I think the weathered brass look complements it just fine, so I just left it as is. When I was taking these little nails out during disassembly, one of them actually went flying across the room, and as far as I was concerned, it was just gone. I was devastated. And at the very end of the project, as I was putting things together, I found it. It was a miracle. So, anyways, these little caps here, they just go over where that little detent shaft rides, just to keep the dirt out and hold the grease in. So as I mentioned previously, that bottom plate on the fan, it was just totally rusted out, and because it's got some exposed wiring and stuff, we've got to have some kind of a plate for that. So I made this just out of a piece of pine. I just routed that out and sanded a little. It's nothing special, but it does the trick and it gives it the proper reveal. I got 3 little feet I'm gonna put on the bottom, give it some stability, and then we'll just screw it down through those 3 holes on top. Also, I chose a brass screw for this, so it'll look a little more correct. I took this apart. This was packed with grease. I'm going to use this synthetic grease. Pretty good stuff. And I'll shoot a little in there. Then we've got our little cap that I made. And it doesn't really fit properly, but this is the best thing I've got. That works good. Okay. Alright, well I think we're going to call that all done. Looks pretty good. Let's see if it works. This thing is going to be for display, honestly. You know, it's not a grounded cord. The thing is 100 years old. The insulation on the windings is pretty rough. So I think it's better for display, but I'd like to know if it works. It should work. See what we got. There she goes. It really moves some air. Okay, we can flip this little lever and then it won't oscillate. Nice and cool. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, well, there it is. One more project down. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.